If he can't see the field, you cannot run this offense. If you've got a kid that has tunnel vision, or you have a kid that in his brain he's already made up his mind pre-snap on what he's going to do, it won't work. You'll have some success because he'll guess right sometimes. You can tell if they've already made up their mind on what they're doing because they start forcing things.
Hi, I'm Bradley Tarpey, and welcome to the Six Man Spotlight, a place where we give a platform to six-man football coaches to share the intricacies of scheme and culture unique to the world of six-man football. Today's guest is Austin Hill Country Christian Chief Operating Officer and former head football coach, Philip Hudgens. For 22 years, Coach Hudgens anchored the sidelines for the Knights, leading the program to 7 district championships and 3 state semifinal appearances. In 2022, he directed the program all the way to the TAP state championship game, capping off decades of consistent postseason excellence. Coach Hudgens is driven by his desire to spread the gospel through the game of six-man football, a point he explains in depth towards the end of the interview as he articulates his why. In my conversation today with Coach Hudgens, we dive into the offense that defines the Hill Country Knights, his Hill Country Diamond Spread. We talk base plays, coaching the spreadback position, and the value of traditional option plays in his offense. I'm a big fan of you guys and Austin Hill Country. I have been for a long time. And, on a wish list of guests that I wanted to have on here, you were high up on there. So I'm really thankful to steal a little bit of your time here at the end of the school year.
You're very kind. Happy to be here.
Well, hey, I know you have a passion for sharing the game, whether it be with students, athletes, other coaches. So, man, the first thing I wanted to jump into you is I wanted to talk some offense. And when I was researching you and sort of the stuff that you guys have done, I went into it thinking you guys were primarily a spread team. But the more I did my research, I noticed that you guys have really dabbled in a lot of different things over the years.
Sure.
So maybe just to kick us off here, I was hoping you could share a little bit about just to you, what does good offense look like? Somebody that's done a lot of different things with success.
Sure. I think there's a couple of things to keep in mind when you run an offense. I think one of the things to keep in mind is how much space you have available to you in this game. The field is still quite large for the number of players that are on it. And so I encourage coaches to take advantage of that. So regardless of what formation you're running, how you start, what you split into, you need to be spreading the field both horizontally and vertically. So from sideline to sideline and from line of scrimmage to end zone, you need to spread the field out. So any offense that does that is going to probably be very successful because the idea is to put an athlete in space, put the ball in his hands, and let him be an athlete. And most of the time, if you can accomplish that, you're going to have a lot of success. So it's just take advantage of the space. So you can do that in just about every formation I've run across. Some formations stretch you from sideline to sideline right from jump. Some offenses may start in a little bit tighter, but I can assure you as that play develops, it is highly likely that they are going to stretch you horizontally if they're doing things correctly. So in a nutshell, I think that's what a good offense does, regardless of what you're running.
Love it.
And we've run a bunch. We've run anything from a pro tee to a true eye to a wing to an offset eye to an offset eye, splitting the end out wide on one side or the other, even running kind of a spread version of an offset eye. We've run a traditional O'Brien veer. We've run a diamond spread. Now, I would say when we run those offenses, we kind of throw our own little touches in there on that.
Yeah,
so
I've noticed
when
that.
we say we run a diamond spread, it's not really the traditional spread that most people see because we're applying some of the same concepts that some of those old school coaches like Terry Crawford or Mitch Lee, from Panther Creek and Terry from Abbott would be doing with the offset eye. And what I mean by that is really being intentional with the angles they're using, with the timing of that offense, how quickly that ball gets to the line of scrimmage, how quickly those guys get downhill. We started applying a lot of those concepts within the framework of a diamond spread, and it really worked well for us as a run-heavy offense, a read and react style offense, and most of the time when you think about a spread offense, traditionally, you might have a team that has a spread back that's anywhere from 12 yards to 18 yards deep, and they have a tendency to be a throw first mindset, run second, which we're kind of the opposite of that. That's why we move up a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage. A traditional spread gets back there, they pat the ball, and they're utilizing that space, but it's almost more of a 7-on-7
Yeah.
style concept, which I'm not a huge fan of that because it feels very one dimensional considering all of the options you have out there if you take advantage of them. So
Well, to your point, even though you guys have ran a bunch of offset I and just everything in between, whether you like it or not, Austin Hill Country and Philip Hudgens does get kind of lumped in as being like the diamond spread people, right?
and that's not
Uh,
a problem. There I can tell you this, even when we ran all those other offenses, we were still running a diamond spread. So we've never not had that in our repertoire.
well, I was wondering if you could just give us a little bit of a quick background, like where did that spread come from? Like I know that you have this weird or you have this unique background of having some college
Sure.
experience with six
Yeah.
man, which is
Yeah,
really
a little bit,
unorthodox. So
a little bit. So back in the day, I was at Mary Hardin Baylor, and at the time they were a Division III university. They were looking towards adding football, or Division II university, my apologies, and they were looking at adding football to their programs, but they knew at the Division II level, the size of the university, even though they were very competitive in baseball and some other sports, they were not going to be able to compete well in Division II. They didn't feel like they could because of the number of students they had. So they were going to make the move to Division III with the idea of bringing football in. But even when they were doing that, they approached the dean of students, which was Ray Martin at the time, and he said, "You can absolutely do that. You have plenty of football players here." And they're like, "Well, how do you know?" And he goes, "I'll show you." So Ray Martin was a six-man football coach over in Oglesby back in the day. In fact, I think his nephew is still the head coach over there to
okay.
this day. And Ray ran a diamond spread. And what he did was he got together with a bunch of guys at Mary Hardin Baylor and said, "Hey, would you guys like to play football?" And we're like, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Well, it'd be six man." What is six man? Then and all the guys just asked me, "Hey, bottom line, do we get to wear pads and hit people?" And he's like, "Yes." And I said, "Sign me up." And so, fun fact, Coach Wintercheck, who was
Yeah.
over at Temple, Central Texas Temple, then he was over at Marble Falls. I had a stint in Fredericksburg, I think actually in between those two, then was at San Antonio Castle Hills. Now I think he's actually back in Temple. He actually was playing some of that six-man football too
Wow.
alongside me. So I actually got to play opposite of Coach Wintercheck, even in college with pads on. So that was a lot of fun. But at any rate, he put together a club team. And then the 2 or 3 following years, they did it. They mixed it up with Howard Payne, Hardin Simmons, Wayland. And it should have been illegal, honestly, because this was back in the day when, you could actually come back and block somebody. And it was a lot of fun, and we were taking people's heads off. And I don't know about you. When I graduated high school, I was about a 155 soaking wet. I was
Yeah.
a
Mhm.
very skinny, lanky free safety, and got to college and I was about 185 and I was not slower. So I was like, man, where was this in high school? This would have been awesome. So anyway, I did get the privilege of putting the pads back on again in kind of an unofficial setting, but boy, it sure was fun. And in that time, Ray was running a diamond spread. So that's kind of what I started with when they had asked me, "Hey, do you know anything about six-man football? Would you be willing to start a team here?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." And I would say in the first couple of years, I had a pretty good idea of what we were doing. I knew we were going to do it different. Even Ray, when he was coaching us, I was already starting to see, man, there's just a lot of opportunity to even run the football because of the space you're in, and set up some really unique blocking schemes and situations as well. And you can do it without having to have a guy that, weighs over 200 pounds. You can do this
Right.
with little bitty guys, right?
Mhm.
And I found that to be true even with the offset eye. You don't have to be able to physically move people. You just have to be able to get between them and the ball and make them have to run through you to make the play. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of ways to be successful in that space with your blocking, and the spread lends itself to that. So as I started trying to run that offense, I was running some base plays that I had picked up from him. But then as I attended clinics, and heard Terry Crawford speak and Mitch Lee speak and some of those guys, I'm like, man, why wouldn't why wouldn't we consider applying some of those basic concepts to this offense and what would happen if we did? And so from there, it snowballed quickly. It evolved very, very rapidly. And that's what you see us running most recently in our
Right.
latter years is a semblance of that. But it took probably 2 or 3 years to really get that rolling and cultivating it. And playing against really good teams just made us better and better because it would show me our keys. It would show me how much more we could advance the offense, change it, start really attacking more than just four gaps, but really start attacking, all six and or eight, however you want to look at it, and running plays that specifically allowed us to do that. And so you'll see us run some plays where it looks like we're primarily utilizing the spread back, and then you'll see us run plays where we're using those up backs to move the ball downhill. And in either case, whoever it's going to, the reason we kind of started doing both was it took a key away. A lot of times, if you're running the basic spread plays, the up back that receives the ball kind of tells you the direction that play is going to go.
Correct. Yeah.
But then when you kind of blend in the option plays with that, now it's the opposite. That guy received the ball, but you're actually going the other direction with other personnel. So it's just been a lot of fun to play with as it's evolved over the years.
Absolutely. I mean, it's my favorite spread offense to watch. And you can just tell when somebody is like in y'all's family or trying to, use y'all's style of diamond. Well, I mean, and speaking of which, it sounds like all you hill country guys are pretty tightly knit. I was talking to
Absolutely.
your competitor, and I think your friend Tim Shipman, and he described this diamond look that you guys run as having only 4 plays. And I know that's probably a little bit tongue in cheek,
It is.
but
It 100% is.
yeah, but how do you respond to that, I guess? What's your response
I
to that
would say
claim?
on the surface, it's easy it's easy for me to see why it may appear that way on the surface because it looks like the same thing. I mean, even sometimes I've had parents that don't have a son playing football that have seen a highlight film and like, man, run that same play
Yeah,
over and over again. So
yeah, that's
we'll
true.
stop it.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Yeah.
but with Tim, I know it's absolutely tongue in cheek because we've had the blessing his coaching staff and our coaching staff, goodness, we've probably gotten together half a dozen times or more over the summers and really drilled down into both our offenses and our defenses. So he knows there's a lot more to it than that. But I would say on the surface, it looks that way. But what I can tell you is even within our four base plays, and I'm talking that's just going one direction. Obviously, now you've got eight if you're going the other
Yeah,
direction
yeah.
even in those four base plays, because it's a read and react style offense, there are so many things that can happen during the course of that play.
Right now.
So if I call spread right or spread left, what I'm basically communicating to our players is let me start here. If you don't have a center that can snap directionally on a rope and put it on a dime, then you're probably not going to have success running this offense. It is timing heavy. We are moving downhill at the snap of the football. The entire backfield is. And if that ball is not where it needs to be, it's incredibly difficult for those athletes to do what they need to do with it. So, in a basic spread right or left play, the ball is actually being snapped right down the middle, right in between those upbacks. It's not being snapped to them, it's being snapped between them.
So sorry to interrupt, but what would you say the width is between those 2
Those
upbacks?
guys, if they stand up and they reach their hand out to the other person, arm outstretched, their fingertips should barely touch. So
Okay.
I'd say
Yeah.
approximately 3 yards, roughly.
Okay.
Roughly. I'll put it this way, there's enough space for me to stand between them.
Okay.
And when I'm training them, that's what I do. So I will stand between those guys and I'll call the play. And the reason I do that is it keeps them from stepping laterally and it forces them to step forward to receive that snap. And by the time they receive that snap, when they go to make the pitch, I'm not in their way because both upbacks and the spread back have already been moving towards the line of scrimmage at about a 45-degree angle, and I'm out of the play. So it gets them moving downhill. I've found that forces them to do that. You hit me, you're going to be in trouble, kind of
Yeah.
thing. And so they're careful to get moving downhill. If you watch enough film on us, you will see when I've got guys that are doing that well and when I've got players that don't, and it does make a tremendous difference in the outcome of those plays. So in that basic spread play, it's going down the middle. If we're going to the right, the left up back's getting it, vice versa. We're going to the left, the right up back's getting it. The opposite up back becomes your lead blocker on the furthest man to the outside. The second man in, whoever is coming, is that up back's responsibility that received the ball. And then the spread back is literally kind of splitting the different or splitting down the middle, running between those guys. And it's run first. And then the second thing of that play that would happen would be if one of those up backs makes the block on the guy, but the guy starts getting off the block, he would release, and then that spread back would dump him the football. The third thing that could happen is he might throw it to the center if that safety runs up and jumps the play. And then the fourth option would be the end to the side he's running to, and then the backside end on the at the very end. So it's
So
basically
when
five
you
things
say
that can
in, I'm
happen.
picturing like a wide receiver.
Ends, wide receivers that line
Okay.
up roughly. I usually pull them off the sideline about 4 to 5 yards, so they're not right on the sideline. They're inside of that. I don't want anybody bumping us out of bounds or forcing us. It leaves us room to get outside if we need to. We don't end up having that limiting feature there, the sideline messing us up. So now, having said that, my spread back is not going to get through 4 or 5
Right.
checks. And so as a coach, it's my job to be able to call a play and say, spread right, check the center. And what I'm changing is the order of operations. So on that play, it's going to look like we're running spread right. But instead of run first, what he's doing is he's looking to the center first. Then it would be run second. Then it would be dump the ball third. So I'm changing the order of operations. But what I'm attempting to do is do it in such a way that he does not have to make more than 2 checks to be successful on the play. If I'm doing a good job as a coach, really watching the field, watching the defense, seeing how they're reacting to our offense and the plays that I'm calling, then I'm able to do that, and it helps them out a lot.
Interesting. I have this vague memory of seeing you at a clinic. Do you guys teach like a numbered blocking rules for your up backs on the spread right, spread left play? I mean, how do they know who to block? I guess is the simple version of the question.
They do count, but I wouldn't say I've numbered the defense because a
Okay.
good defense, they may put 4 on the line, but you don't know which 4 are coming, which 3 are coming, or which 2 are coming, right? So I basically have my guys start from the far right and count right to left. If they run a 4-man front and that guy on the front side peels and just drops, that guy knows I've got the next guy in that's coming across the line of scrimmage or staying on the line of scrimmage. So
Okay.
the up back on the right has the furthest guy to the outside and he's turning him out, not trying to hook him, right? The next guy in that's on our side of the line of scrimmage becomes the other up back. And then, so some teams will run a box to try to make that more difficult on you so that they can kind of have a tip of the triangle coming up to fill and a safety dropping back on the center. We have things that we do to mess that up as well. But traditionally from jump, when you start, it's furthest guy, next guy in. And then the way that comes into play, I know we're not talking about it yet, but on the option play, what we're doing is I make sure we're leaving that outside guy alone. We want him coming, and that's who we're optioning off of. And in that case, it's important for that outside up back not to hit the first guy to the
Right.
outside, but the second guy to the outside.
To me, the spread right, spread left play, it to me, it seems kind of like the foundational play. But
Mhm.
then the next compliment, in my opinion, of course, is I don't know if this is your official term for it, but your bump and dump
That is the
series.
official term. It's real
Okay,
fancy.
cool.
Yes.
No, I like that.
So
Yeah, talk
it's
us through that.
It looks exactly the same as spread right and spread left, but we are intentionally going to, with our lead up back that is getting the furthest guy to the outside of this
Right.
direction and side of the ball that we're running to. We're going to hit him and then release off of him into space, behind him. I will say this early on, my biggest pet peeve was to snap the ball back there, throw a forward pass, and we're still not even to the line of scrimmage yet. That is insane to me. And actually, a lot of your traditional spreads end up in that scenario because they're throw first and they're 15 yards deep. And that spread back gets under duress and he doesn't see the field well. He throws it to the first guy he sees, and it's usually the guy closest to him. And that guy may not even be to the line of scrimmage yet.
Right.
Oftentimes, the guy is standing still, he's not even moving. So we don't do that. Our outside guy runs up, he bumps the guy. This is really one of the most important parts of the play. If that guy does not make the defense change direction, stop their feet, it's a violent hit. You got to hit the guy. If you make contact with him and he continues on the same stride, same pace, and same angle that he's coming, you did not bump him, and it's not going to be sufficient. So a lot of times the way your kids are thinking is, well, if I take the time to do that, then I'm not going to be open. I can't get open in time. And it's actually not true. So what I do is I bring them together. I say, okay, just walk this out. So they walk until they get to each other. I said, okay, he has stopped. You have stopped. Your spread back is protected still, right? I said, okay, now once you release off of him, what's he going to do? He takes a step towards the spread back. And I say, you take a step. He takes a step. So right there in their first step, they've already got 2 yards of separation. By the time they've each taken 3 steps, the kid's upfield, he's past the line of scrimmage, and he's moving downhill, and there's enough separation from the defender and him to easily get the ball to him. And the guy's not in the spread back's face yet because the guy
Right.
bumped him. And that's the main thing. If you don't get the bump, you may be wide open, but that dude is clobbering your spread back. So we call those the lookout block. Look out. And, your spread back gets wasted. So it's not good, not a good scenario. So, yeah.
And so you guys will also run that strong and weak, correct?
Strong and weak.
So meaning like your bump and dump play, like it looks like spread right, and the right up back is leaking out strong in my mind. But
Yes.
don't you also have a version where you will, so even though the flow is going to the right, the
Hmm.
dump will come out to the left. Am I
Yes.
thinking about
So
that right?
that's correct. So
Okay.
that's what we call spread right or left throwback pass.
Okay.
So what happens on that play, on the bump and dump play, your spread back is going to the direction that he's throwing the ball to.
Right.
So he's going to what I call buzz his steps. Ball's got to be at his chest. They got to be thinking he's throwing or running. We don't know the whole time. He's chopping his feet, buzzing his feet. What that does is that keeps the safety or the corner from knowing how hard is that guy coming to the line of scrimmage? Oh, he's coming, but he's actually kind of slowing himself down a little bit to help with that spacing, and he is bending towards the direction that up back is going because he's got the protection over here to help him out. On the throwback pass, what happens is the side they're running to, that lead up back gets his block and he holds his block. Your backside up back runs a Z route. So it's this way, this way. What it's not is this. And that's how your kids tend to run the route unless you train it out of them. The reason they get flat coming back is because it's easier to get their head around to catch the football.
Okay.
It's harder to see when you're on this angle, the QB throwing you the football. It's easier to see when you're flat. You don't have to turn your head around as far. So you have to train them to run that. The reason that's important is because if you flatten, you don't get past the line of scrimmage and you're not going downhill when you receive the football. We want our guys moving towards the end zone when they're receiving the football. So that guy runs that Z out. Well, what does that mean? It means that second defender is now not blocked. So on that play, your spread back drifts even more to the right to tuck himself in behind that lead block, running away from that defender that's coming towards him. The reason he's able to do that most of the time is most teams are going to send 3, and that middle guy that's coming is usually on one side or the other of the center. So he's
Right.
not like right there. So it allows the spread back to tuck in behind that other lead block and make a pretty easy throw right there back to the backside. So spread right, spread right and left bump and dump, and spread right and left throwback pass. And then from there, we usually trickle into our option plays,
Can,
which
can I hit you
utilize.
with can I hit you with one more throwback slash bump and dump question? And I know that there's a history and a knowledge in this offense that you have that, listeners might not.
Mhm.
But what's like your thought process? Like, why are you running a throwback play versus a bump and dump? Is it game plan? Is there something you're seeing on the sideline? Like, what's dictating
Sure.
that we need that call right now?
Defense and the flow of the defense. If guys are over pursuing the direction you're running to stop those 2 plays, which is what typically has to happen, your backside of the defense that's on the line or not far into the backfield is going to have to start moving laterally quickly. Because if they're not, those two plays are going to the house
Right.
over and over again. The only way they get stopped is usually from that backside help. So as that backside help gets more and more aggressive, now they're aggressively going with the flow of the play. When you leak that guy out on a Z route, what happens is your guy's running this way and he's running that way and he can't recover.
Yeah.
He's at best, he's planting his foot, turning around, and now he's in chase coverage. Does that make sense?
It
So it's
does.
just over pursuit of the defense. They're overplaying those other plays to stop them, and they end up opening themselves up on the backside. It's the same type thing you would do in an offset eye. You're running strong side sweep, strong side sweep, strong side sweep. I call that a 434. Running that. And then all of a sudden, you leak that center out on the backside on a little pass, right? And he blocks and then releases, and then there's nobody there. Why? Because the defense is having to shift and flow towards the play to shut it down. And so, same concept.
Yeah. No, no, that makes sense. It's just, by the way, the throwback stuff, I think that's my favorite play in the whole system. It's
Yeah,
a lot of
it's
fun.
it's a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
Yeah.
We mess a lot of people up with that. We do run those same style plays with what I call cross right and left, and all you're doing is crossing your up backs. If I call cross right, it's still going to the left up back. The first guy's going on that one. It is a direct snap. If you go to the middle, they collide and it makes a big fat mess. So it does sit still to take that. The way you figure out who's releasing is if it's a 3-man front, the guys know that they are going to block the biggest gap. So if you've got 2 guys on this side of the center and 1 guy here, these are the 2 they're blocking. And
Okay.
so
Yeah.
the guy on the right's getting this guy, the guy on the left is getting this guy, and they cross. And then the way they know who's releasing is the guy that's getting the single side back is the one that releases. So you can line it up this way and I'm still going
Yeah.
to get the guy over here knows he's the one releasing. Crossing the up backs works well against teams that start keying your up backs
Right.
to try if they're playing man and or switching rules or applying, if they're manned up,
Right.
those guys cross, it can really mess up the defense if they're not as good as Coach Shipman guys who kind of run some switching rules and boy, they get crafty with their defense. So
Yeah.
yeah, they make me run plays, they make me invent plays to run just to kind of counter what they're doing on defense.
Well, I think that's a good segue because doesn't that have a little bit to do with like your option series, the
It
first a bit?
does. So, option kind of came about from playing against Coach Euland. The crossplay came from playing Coach Euland over at Greenville. And then even with Coach Shipman, he's the only coach that I've ever actually run a counter option on because he is so aggressive coming down the line to stop the option with his backside guy. So we actually run a counter for him because of his over pursuit to shut that play down. So on the option play, the ball is snapped to the up back of the side that you're going to, which is kind of that key buster for the spread stuff. We've been snapping the ball to this guy. You think we're going that way the whole time because spread, we would be. But when
Right.
we're running option, now you snap to this guy and we're actually going this way. So ball goes to him. This guy floats the ball in the middle. He lead blocks. This guy runs this way, and your spread back is in route behind him to run a true option with it. Things that make that play not work are the same things that make it not work in 11 man. Oftentimes, what kids do when they're running the option is they run it more like a sweep, like they're
Right.
trying to get outside. And in doing so, the kid they're pitching off of they literally get to kill 2 birds with 1 stone because they run right through your lead guy, your pitch man, and then end up right on your guy that you're pitching to. And so the only way you make it work is you have to get inside of him and make him commit to you. If he commits to you, you get the pitch off and you're good to go. If he doesn't, you tuck it and you go. And guess what? Your pitch man gets to follow him all the way down the football. So that one's a lot of fun. I think the hardest thing to get my guys to remember is that backside or that lead up back is not getting the furthest guy outside. I think the reason it's hard for them to remember that is because on a regular spread play, that is who they're blocking. That's who they've been blocking every time. And so now I'm asking them, no, you've got the second man in. What I typically tell them is your first step should be straight ahead. And that's going to put you on the correct path to block the second man in. Some of your defenses will cross at the line, and then he gets confused. It's like, no, take one step forward and take a second step forward. And I guarantee you that
He's gonna
second
be
man on the inside, he's going to be right there. But that also gets you out of the way of my other up back so he can go where he needs to go. So they catch the ball, float it straight in the air. They're not throwing it to the guy. The guy, again, is only 2 or 3 yards away from him. He just has to toss it up. That guy just takes it right out of the air and goes to town.
yeah. Okay.
So the variant on that, so those plays, like we were talking, the different gaps, option right and option left are attacking the 2 gap and the 1 gap with the option to get it
Yeah.
out to the 6, and or the 5 gap. So that's kind of the angle there. And then your lead block is taking place in that 4 gap or 3 gap area.
Yeah. It's good stuff,
Or I
coach.
apologize, not the lead block. That's where that defense ends up, you hope, so that you've got a clear space to run through. Yeah.
Well, hey, that's a really good breakdown of sort of like the base foundation of the offense. But,
Mhm.
kind of the art of coaching is really the secret sauce and what makes all this work. Like anybody can draw this stuff, but it's the details that make it go, right?
Mhm. Sure.
The coaches I've talked to about you have been really complimentary of your spreadbacks, that you do a good job preparing those guys. And I think we
Sure.
all know that coaching quarterbacks is kind of an abstract thing. It's a lot different coaching a quarterback than coaching an offensive lineman, for example, at
Sure.
least in my
Sure.
opinion. So I was curious, like the training of these spreadbacks. Is there a drill to this? Is it film? I know that the answer is probably a
There's
little bit of everything, but like what's the spreadback whisper secrets over there?
there are lots of drills. It depends on the kid on which ones you need to run. One of the things I have found is your spread back, he doesn't have to be your fastest player. He doesn't have to have the best arm on the team either, but he's got to have great vision. If he can't see the field, you cannot run this offense. If you've got a kid that has tunnel vision, or you have a kid that in his brain, he's already made up his mind pre-snap on what he's going to do, it won't work. You'll have some success because he'll guess right
Yeah.
sometimes. And sometimes it's like, maybe this kid could do it. But as you keep running plays, if he is doing that, it's pretty easy to pick up on. You can tell if they've already made up their mind on what they're doing because they start forcing things. Typically, if we're putting the ball in another kid's hands, he's wide open. And so if he's throwing to guys that are covered up, chances are he's not reading the field. And so one of the things we train them to do is see the field. If they can do this drill, typically they can learn and they get better and better and better. And if they can't, they're probably never going to be able to, kind of deal. I mean, you can keep spinning the wheels and working with them if that's what you have to do. And sometimes there are years like that. But the big drill I do to teach that is what I tell my spread back is his eyes should be about to where he should kind of be looking right in the middle of the field, 10 to 15 yards down the field. I want his eyes there because that's where he can see the whole defense with his peripheral vision. And so he has to get used to not looking at that defense that's coming at him. He has to watch those guys and his guys in his peripheral vision, but get his focus upfield, down the field, away from him, not what's right in front of him. That's where the kids get under duress. They make bad decisions. They get panicky. They let go of the ball when they shouldn't. All those things. So one of the things I do early on, if a kid's struggling with that, is I'll stand about 12 yards deep, center of the field, and at the snap of that ball, they already know what the play is. Snap of the ball, I'll do something like that. That kid has to yell at me 35 before he does anything. And so that's telling me his eyes are where they need to be. And the more they start doing that, then the more they trust that. I could do this, I could change it, and they'd still be yelling numbers at me. And if they can yell a couple of numbers at me, I know their eyes are on me and they're looking at all this with their peripheral vision, and it's allowing them to see everything. Your kids that have that great arm, and they've got their buddy and I'm gonna be open, throw me the ball kind of junk.
Yeah.
It's yeah, that's the kind of thing that kills this offense because it's not that style offense. It is literally a read and react offense, and you're putting the ball where the defense is not. That's the name of the game again because you're trying to get the ball in the hands of your athletes in open space. And so, again, if he's putting the ball in the hands of somebody who's covered up, he's probably not doing what we need him to do. If you've got a team that's running a straight man defense, then it's like, okay, well, where are my mismatches?
Right.
Things like that. That's what you start taking advantage of, and you create those in different areas. One of the plays that we'll run to complement that, because if they're in a man defense, chances are they're only going to put one guy on your spread back, and I kinda like those odds.
Yeah,
I
sure.
it's usually a pretty good athlete, so
Mhm.
gonna be hard to tackle him in space, but it's called flare right and left, and what happens on that one is your up backs run wheel routes, not flares, but wheels, so they're horizontal and then vertical, and your spread back, that is the only play he stands in the middle to make a decision, and he's not running downhill right away. The reason he's not is because he can look with his peripheral vision and see where did those defenders go? And if they're not a true man, he's throwing to the guy that's wide open. Those defenders go with him and he's got that guy in front of him. He's got 10 yards between him and that defender, and he's got time to sit and let that play develop before he starts moving. And then once he does, eyes upfield, he's going to get to make one move before the line of scrimmage. He doesn't get to sit there and dance. He's coming, and then he's going to stick foot and go that way, or he's going to stick foot and go that way and go around the defender. So he's going to get
Once again,
downhill quick.
I just appreciate that y'all coach that there's intentionality behind, you know.
Absolutely.
I feel it's fair to say that a lot of the playmaking in this offense revolves around the 2 up backs and the spread back, right?
Hmm.
Now,
Hmm.
I'm curious when you have a guy at receiver, or maybe you have a center that's a special pass receiver,
Hmm.
how do you get those guys involved in the game if maybe even if the defense is sort of trying to take them away on your spread play where they are an
Hmm.
option, but they're not always going to get there? So how do you get them involved in the game?
So once you get a spread back that can see the field well, then what you can start doing is you can really change your routes up. So there have been years where you've seen us, man, we're just running flies on every play. Well,
Uh-huh.
that's because we're limited on what we've got going on. I
Yeah.
know who my guys are and who they aren't. But when you really have 6 stud athletes on the field, you bet I'm gonna be putting the ball in that end's hands on either side and those centers' hands. And you can do that by running fly routes, and oftentimes we do, but what we also do is we'll flood the one side of the field, or we'll drag routes across that kind of open up a post on the backside, or post over the middle or over the top. If we can really get that safety coming up and biting on that center on a slant route, because we hit him real quick a couple of times. He's like, let's say we're running spread right, check the center, and I put the center on a 3-yard slant. Then all of a sudden, now that safety's coming up. Well, what happens there? Well, that corner's probably coming up to help out. And now I've got a post right in the middle of the field wide open with that right end. So there are certainly ways to get those guys rolling. The way I try to reward them is like, it's got to feel good to block for your brother so he's in the end zone. So you do that, I'm going to get you the football. So it's kind of a little reward system going on there. And, some of my favorite kids to coach are those ends that want to be aggressive blockers, and they're going to lock up with their guy, and they're going to block him, and they're going to get upfield, and they're going to block another guy. And I had a receiver one year. It was not uncommon for him to make at least 2 blocks on one play, and both of those be critical blocks to get one of our other guys into the end zone. And that kid could also catch the ball really well, and I made sure I gave him opportunities to do that too. But I want everybody on our team to be an excellent blocker on offense. I don't care if it's the center, the end, the up back, or the spread back. We run plays where my spread back is a blocker. Option right and left spread back block is so that we can run more of a sweep. If that outside guy on the option play just keeps pinching in, pinching in, pinching in, and they make it easy for us, we'll release that spread back. He'll hook the outside guy. And now instead of running that option, what we're doing is running a sweep, and we're hitting the 6 gap or the
Mhm.
5 gap.
Yeah.
And it is a true traditional sweep. The reason we do that again is if that defense just keeps cheating in, cheating in, cheating in, we can hook him with our spread back, and the only person there is the corner. And if the end's doing his job, I mean, we've got a gap we're running through that's probably 15 yards wide with 2 lead blockers. You can drive a semi through that hole. So get to the line and go.
Yeah. The value in you communicating to the spread back, like the check post or like check center, check
Mhm.
this, check that. That seems like a pretty valuable part of making this offense go. Do you have any advice for coaches that are interested in this offense of how you train that? Like, is it truly random? Are you practicing those checks in practice? And once again, I'm sure it's a little bit of both, but
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. So the way that we run through that in practice is we're going to run we're going to scout the other team well. We're going to run defenses at us that we believe they're going to run at us, and we know that there's not a lot of people that do what we do, so we know from week to week we're going to come out, we may see something we've never seen. So my defensive coordinator's like, okay, that's what we think they're going to do. That's their plan B, we think. What's their plan C, D, and E?
Uh-huh.
Throw it at me. I don't care. Confuse us. And I will say, our guys are pretty good at defending what they do, especially when we've had the years where we've had the numbers where I've got some guys that are primarily on defense and guys that are primarily on offense. They get pretty good at it and they get really creative and they start twisting and switching and doing all the things. And so that makes me better as a coach because I can have conversations with the spreadback like, you see what they're doing? Okay, so what do you think's going to be open? And I try to see if they can tell me what they think I'm going to tell them. And
Yeah.
so it's a lot of that. I really want them to get to a point to where I've got two or three coaches on the field, that are playing the game, not just relying on the sideline. Again, I don't want them calling their own plays. We're not talking about that, but I want them to understand. I want them to anticipate what they think I'm going to call because of what they're seeing. And as they get into their latter part of their junior year and certainly into their senior year, the really good spreadbacks are at a point to where they probably know the play that's coming before I even send it in because we've worked on it so much in practice. And they know the goal. They know what we're trying to accomplish. It's like we're going to take what the defense is giving us. The defense is giving us this because they're trying to stop us from doing X. So we're going to take Y.
Yep.
And they learn that. It just takes a lot of time, a lot of reps, whole lot of reps.
That's part of the
And
fun of coaching, right?
absolutely, absolutely.
In my research for today's conversation, it keeps standing out to me how unique y'all are and how much sort of a traditional 11-man style like option exchange stuff y'all do, right?
Mhm.
Attacking a read key and pitching off of them or cutting up the field. And that's
Sure.
really unique in six man. And it seems just really intentional. But I would advise coaches that stuff is not easy to do. So I was hoping you could kind of talk us through in this edition of the depth chart 3 things that make running option plays difficult. Okay. So the first one is identifying the pitch key. So pre snap, that's the guy I'm reading the pitch off of.
Mhm.
Number 2, teaching the actual pitch decision on whether I should keep it, pitch it, cut, whatever. And the
Mhm.
third one is allocating enough practice time to actually get good at it.
Mm.
So between those 3 things, obviously they're all pretty difficult, but how would you rank them in terms of their difficulty in executing option schemes?
Okay, so the first one was identifying who we're going to pitch off of.
Yes, sir.
Your second one was making the decision of
Correct.
whether to keep the ball or pitch, and your third one was allocating time in practice to do it. Man, to rank those, goodness gracious, all three are critical. I don't think
Nice.
it. Can I say if you're not willing to do all three of those things, don't even try. They're
Absolutely.
all equally important.
Yeah.
I can't imagine any of those one things breaking down and not and you having success. I
Right.
mean, all 3 are critical. I don't know if that's a trick question or not, but there's no way I'm ranking that.
Yeah.
They're of equal importance. So, the practice time, what I would say about that one is, early on when the guys are young, and I would say even at the beginning of the season when we're not even in pads yet, we're talking like August practice, right? Those first couple of weeks, when you're in helmets only. That is an awesome time to work on that stuff because so much of it is timing and exchanges and angles. Everything we're talking about can be taught in
Right
that
on.
time. You don't have to wear pads to teach this stuff. And I run a lot of drills that drill that play. And so we'll run some 2-on-2 stuff, some 3-on-3 stuff. We start with cones and I make everybody do it and I make everybody play all 3 positions. And so my spread back isn't always that last guy. I put them in groups of 3 and they're rotating through all three positions because I want everybody to know what they have to do. So I would say there's not a player on my team that hasn't run that play in all three positions, at least, I don't know how many times in a practice, certainly early on in the season. Now, you get into the season, you identify your ups backs and your spread backs. They're primarily in those spots. But there are plenty of practices where I'm like, no, he's out. You're my spread back. And I'll get two or three deep at spread back. Ideally, on a team that I'm coaching, it is a great season if I have two spread backs and five up backs. That's what I'm going for. And in this game, you never know who's going to get hurt. So you're crazy if you're not playing in that way. And those
Yeah.
guys get reps. And so when we're in a practice, I've got both guys back there. I'm running a spread back and two different up backs on this play, and they're running. And I'm already coaching this group up and that play happening. And this coach is watching them and coaching them. And I got the next one. And I mean, we're cycling, cycling, cycling. So as far as making time and practice for it, I would say get creative for sure. And consider when you're really working on a play like that, you don't have to be going 6-on-6. You can go 3-on-2 and you can get guys in lines. When we're drilling that early in the season outside of pads, I've got a group down here. I've got two defenders with me. And I've got three guys in the backfield with three waiting behind them. And I've got the same thing behind me happening. And as this group runs that play, they go to the end of that line and they're going to be coming back. And it's just a big rotation. We'll do that for 25, 30 minutes. It's a ton of conditioning on top of that. So, and you're training on all those things. And so how do you work on that? How do you identify the guy? Well, I've got my two guys. It's like, who's the outside guy? Who's the inside guy? I'll have them cross. I'll have them stay put. But if that up back is not going to that guy, and I tell these guys, take it easy on them at first. They're just trying to get their exchanges. So don't go crazy,
Uh,
take one or two steps and let them come get you. So a while I'll put a dummy in their hand and I'll let them get physical with each other. But you just baby step them into that. And then once the exchanges and the angles start getting better and better and better, then you can help have those defensive guys get more and more aggressive and or throw some curveballs at them by crossing. And well, was that the second man in? Well, they cross, coach. Yeah, I know, but if you take your first step forward instead of running out there, he's going to present himself. So all those little things we talked about earlier, you drill the heck out of that. And that's where they learn, how do I identify the guy on the outside? How do I identify the second man in? And then you just expand it. You put more players on the field and you go from there.
that's tricks of the trade.
Yeah.
I mean, what I'm taking from that answer is that's time intensive, and a lot of things that
Mhm.
y'all do is time
Mhm.
intensive. So with how difficult just running sort of y'all's base offense to kind of wrap up this option conversation, why is it so valuable to you to have traditional option pitch plays in?
I think what it does for us, my opinion, is adding that play along with the option right and left spread back block play. That's what allows us to attack every single gap on the field that we feel like is vulnerable. And the reason to me that's important is because as that defense begins to try to slow you down, they're going to kind of change their alignment on the line, where they're coming from. How wide am I lining up? How tight am I lining up? You know what I mean? As far as those guys that are on the line that are coming at you. And if they're a little bit too far out here, okay, this is the play I know really attacks that gap. So that's where I'm going to go. If they're getting in too tight, well, I know that this play attacks this one. If they're just kind of in la la land, well, this play is perfect for that because So I think to me, that's why it allows you to attack every single gap on the field intentionally because that's the gap they're making most available to you by their alignment
Cool.
and or by what they're doing after the ball is snapped. Sometimes they line up that way, but they're crashing, or they're, all of a sudden they key you and they decide to bail. It just, again, those gaps, just being able to see that. What's the defense doing? How are they lining up and where are they ultimately going? And where's the space that we can attack?
Well, Coach, I really appreciate you taking the time. Busy time of year. It's a crazy time of year.
Yes.
You know, the show is called the Six Man Spotlight, and it's my mission to give a platform and to give a spotlight to six man coaches across Texas, maybe next season across the state. I'm
I
sorry,
love
across
it.
the country. But, we've given you the spotlight a lot here. I'm curious, is there anybody in your life, in your program, at your school that you want to give a little love to and move the spotlight to for a
Golly.
minute?
Um,
These last two questions have been tough, haven't they?
No, not really. It's
Yeah.
just,
There's a
I
lot of
guess
people.
when you do something for 23 seasons, there's just too many to name. I would say this: all the assistant coaches I've had that have shared the same mindset. And I'll be honest with you, I believe our success has had more to do with our coaches that are discipleship minded. One of the men I did that with probably for the longest was Dr. Jeff Marks, who coached with me. He's probably, well, he is, he's the best defensive coach I've ever worked with. The guy is a genius. I mean, literally, he is. He's brilliant. But that's not what made him so good. What made him so good is he's a master teacher and his mission is aligned with mine. So, my why on why I do what I do is, in short, it's to proclaim the redemption and restoration that's been made available to a brokenhearted world through the work of Jesus Christ by sharing my life experience, to inspire and encourage young men to embrace manhood, to teach and train them to reject passivity, accept responsibility, lead courageously, and expect a greater reward, God's reward, by my example as a husband, father, and coach. That's why I do this. Coach Marks is cut from that same cloth. Coach Raspberry. I mean, there's too many people to name for sure, so I don't want to get too far off on that. But the coaches I've worked with, that is their why, and because they are loving on those kids first and foremost, and pointing them to Jesus, not with just their mouth, but with their life, the way they choose to live, the way they do the hard thing, the amount of blood, sweat, and tears that those coaches put into it, as well as it's sacrifice. It is selfless. It is about the other guy. It's about we, not me. And getting our young men to buy into that and to do those hard things. I think I put the spotlight on all those young men I've had the privilege to coach because having done it that long, some of those guys are husbands and fathers now. I just texted one the other day and, he's got 3 daughters. I have 4 daughters, and in fact,
Wow.
there was a point where one of my daughters was babysitting his 3 daughters. It's crazy, but just seeing those guys grow up and put God first and love Jesus and the kind of husbands and fathers they're becoming, just, my gosh, that's the blessing. I mean, that's why I do it. And that is, it's just been so great to coach them. And those guys learning how to be sacrificial and do that for their brother. That's, I touched briefly. I want everybody to be an amazing blocker on this team. Well, that's a sacrificial thing, right? You're not getting the glory necessarily doing that, but they all find the joy in that. And the guys that were willing to do what I asked them to do the last part of those few seasons what we had, our theme, it's a little crass, but it was internal. I didn't broadcast this, but it was embrace the suck.
I like it.
And that's, it's just the concept of Hebrews 12, right? They've talked about the heroes of the Bible. He goes through that and then he talks about, let us Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let's throw off the sin that so easily entangles us and run the race marked out for us with perseverance. And then he talks about the how. How do you do that? Let us then, therefore, fix our eyes on Jesus, the author, perfecter, and finisher of our faith, who for the joy set before him did what? He endured the cross, scorned its shame, and is now seated at the right hand of God the Father. Let us consider him who experienced such opposition so that we do not grow weary and lose heart. I try to get them to think, and we've done this with every team, but to me, this is the crux of it. This has so much to do with being a man. I think it's very countercultural. In our current situation, if you ask parents what they want for their kids, I want them to be happy. I want them to have fun. Well, I want
Yeah.
that too, but that doesn't produce the kind of fruit you're looking for and or develop the character, right? So you got to be willing to go through the grind. Well, how did Jesus consider it, pure joy? How did he do that? Joy set before him did what? Well, it was his focus. And that's exactly what the writer of Hebrews is telling us. Get your focus on the right thing. In both those situations, the focus isn't on the unpleasant nature of the circumstance. The focus is on what am I working towards? And so then you have to put that Colossians 3:23 and 24 mindset in them. Whatever you do, what?
Do it.
Work at it with all your heart, right? It's Christ Jesus you're serving, not men who you're going to get your reward from. So getting them to embrace that practice. It's not necessarily always fun. It's
Yep.
usually pretty hard, right?
It's not supposed to be.
Embrace those unpleasant circumstances so that you can have that joyful experience. And in that, what you'll begin to find is they start to find joy in that. They start to appreciate and enjoy the hard work because then they realize what it's producing. Just like Christ, it's on the circumstance that brought him joy. His focus was on, I am redeeming mankind. I'm going to do this thing that's going to redeem my creation and bring them back to me. And so his focus was on you, coach, and all those
Uh,
other coaches and all those players and me. That's what he was focused on. That's how he found joy in that. His focus wasn't the cross, but because he was so hyper focused on what I'm going to do is going to redeem man, he was able to endure the cross. So sacrificial love. And the teams that understand that concept go far. I have not found a tool better than 6-man football to do exactly what I was talking about, why I do what I do. It's an environment where the rubber meets the road. It's such an Iron Man type deal. And
yeah.
it's just a great tool to help a boy become a man.
Yeah. And
The
embrace
man
the suck, right?
it does, man. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it allows that opportunity. What
Uh,
someone goodness, what did that young lady say? Manufactured adversity is
mm,
what she called it. And I'm like, that is spot on. You think about how important that is to our culture because there is some of this, but as a whole, we're not sending our young men off to war. There's some of that happens, right? But as an entire culture, it's not what's happening. And so that manufactured adversity, where else are they going to get it?
right.
And if they're not getting some of that, how are they going to develop the character they need to be the men God has called them to be and created them to be? So, anyway, just a couple. I don't know if I answered your question, but
No.
I will tell you, I mean, goodness, the coaches I've worked with over the years, the players I've had the honor and privilege of coaching, I'll email you a roster and you can list all their names on the screen or something.
Yeah.
That's
Like
what I want.
credits.
And yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, in 23 seasons, there's a bunch for sure.
Well, I'm just reminded the scheme stuff is fun, but this
Mhm.
is a powerful reminder of how valuable what we're doing is, right? Beyond the on-field
Absolutely.
stuff. So, but once again, coach,
Absolutely.
I've heard that you had this quality to you, and I'm glad that we got to touch into it a little bit here at the
Oh,
end of the
yeah.
interview. Yeah.
My
I,
pleasure. My
I
pleasure.
appreciate you, man.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for the opportunity. I've enjoyed it.
Yes,
And
sir.
again, I'll put it out there. I have not coached in the last 2 years, but that has not kept me from meeting with other coaches who are currently coaching. And I'm always happy to sit down. I would say if you really want to get into this offense, usually in about 3 to 4 hours, I can cover most of what needs to be covered to kind of start playing with this a little bit. But it usually takes several follow-up questions and times together to really get it rolling. And I've got coaches that have met with me certainly more than once and certainly more than 1 year. They've
Yeah.
done it over a period of time because there are little things that happen, and usually I can help them identify what it is that's not really clicking or working, and help them fine-tune some stuff, save them a little bit of time.
Well, I hope your inbox blows up after this conversation gets posted.
Okay, fair. That's fair.
So, Coach reached out to me after the fact, and he felt he would be remiss if he did not mention a few coaches outside of his own staff as people he wanted to give a shout out to. He mentions the coaches Tim Shipman, a former podcast guest, Larry Olin, Jeremy Wintercheck, and Bryce Helton as being cut from the same cloth in terms of their mission of leading young men through the game of football. I want to briefly share a story about Coach Hudgens. I remember being a young coach, probably in my teens, maybe my early 20s, and traveling to Seguin, Texas for my first 6-man football clinic. At that clinic, I got to observe firsthand a brief install of the same offense that Coach shared with us today in our conversation. And for me, that was a transformative moment in my career as a young coach. I had begun to be interested in football schematics, but my interest was more in the 11-man world. At the time, I probably saw 6-man as being a simpler and honestly lesser version of football. But in that moment, to see Coach Hudgens at that clinic present and speak with such detail and passion on his system, it really opened my eyes to what was possible in the game of six-man. With that in mind, this is special for me to get to share this conversation with Coach and his view of the game with you all. There are lots of highlights, obviously. I'm a scheme nerd, so I enjoyed hearing Coach talk about their different base plays from their diamond spread. But if I was a coach actually interested in running this, I think that the little details that he trickled in about drilling and teaching the spread back might be the most valuable thing. And to mention it again, if this system caught your attention, I've already posted a video cut up of the Hill Country spread. It's a video more than 30 minutes long, and it serves as a visual representation of a number of the concepts discussed today, and even a couple that we did not go into that much detail on. In the description of this video, I'll be posting a link to a Google Drive that also includes a playbook, which I intermixed in this video interview for you to reference as you study Coach Hudgens' system. I hope that you'll find it valuable. I mentioned it earlier, but frankly, I'm a big fan of Coach. And I'm really proud of this content I was able to put together for this video, and I really do hope that you enjoyed it. And if you did, I hope that you'll press the subscription button so that you can catch my next release coming out soon. For the rest of June and July, I really want to lean into posting more personal content and less interviews, less conversation, so I have a lot to share in the coming weeks, and just hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of it. Thanks for sticking around till the end, guys, and I'll catch you next time.